We begin this hour with technology and the law, where we have just learned that Huawei is now facing charges right here in the United States for racketeering. This according to newly unsealed federal indictments. Now, the U.S. officials claim they have evidence the Chinese telecom giant has back doors and can access mobile phone networks around the world. And they apparently have had this evidence for over a decade.
And liftoff of our solar orbit.
Well, the Solar Probe, a joint US and European project, took off from Florida on Sunday. The $1.5 billion vehicle won't get close enough to the sun to pass the sun's atmosphere, but it is set to take photos of the sun's poles, something that's never been done before.
Nevada officials are bracing for an invasion at Area 51. By humans. The military base 80 miles from Las Vegas has become infamous for conspiracy theories about little green men.
They certainly appear to still be covering up what exactly goes on at Area 51.
If you and I walked in on everything that was being done, I'm sure we would be flabbergasted.
Home to an alien prisoner in Independence Day and countless encounters with the X-Files agent Mulder.
It's all our questions, the proof that we've suspected but never been able to hold in our hands. That proof is here.
Now the extraterrestrial hub is front and center thanks to a Facebook group dubbed Storm Area 51 They Can't Stop Us All. Attracting more than 2 million fans, the movement quickly went from a joke to no laughing matter.
The FBI agents that showed up, they showed up at 10 a.m. because I was kind of scared at this point, but they were super cool. They really just wanted to make sure I wasn't like some kind of actual terrorist that's making pipe bombs.
The Air Force, which denies any alien visitors or ships, issued a stern warning, saying, quote, any attempt to illegally access military installations or military training areas is dangerous, and promised to, quote, defend America and its assets. Creator Matty Roberts stood down.
It's insane. I just created a joke while I was playing video games, man, and it's taken off to this like absolutely wild monster.
Now his wild monster has morphed into a vision for a different invasion. Up to 50,000 festival goers descending on the otherworldly tourism hotspot of Rachel, Nevada. But behind those barbed wire fences, officials are tracking something. The military reporting a spike in reports of unidentified flying objects of the very real variety. Fighter pilots sharing their stories of close encounters in the skies. And officials are paying attention. According to the Washington Post, the Defense Department is spending $22 million on a government program looking into UFOs.
On a series of bizarre attacks, dozens of unexplained illnesses, including head injuries, forced the U.S. to bring home diplomatic staff from China and the U.S. Embassy in Cuba. Speculation at the time was that it was some sort of sonic attack. But now the scientist who led the investigation tells the New York Times the main culprit is likely some kind of microwave weapon.
The mystery, who or what caused American officials living in these Havana homes and several hotels to suffer headaches, dizziness, and some serious brain injuries similar to a concussion. Last year, Cuban investigators told us they would never allow their territory to be used that way. But now Russia is the leading suspect, NBC News has learned, according to 3 U.S. officials and 2 others briefed on the investigation. Evidence, they say, backed up by highly secret communications intercepts collected during a lengthy and ongoing investigation involving the FBI, CIA, and other agencies. U.S. officials also tell NBC News investigators now believe the Americans were deliberately targeted.
This is not an accident, and those who think this is some sort of rogue operation, I think, are operating in a fantasy world.
The State Department says it is still investigating.
We have not assigned any blame, and we continue to look into this.
An NBC News exclusive on those alleged sonic attacks against American diplomats in Cuba. For the first time, the Cuban officials investigating those incidents are speaking out, denying their country had anything to do with it. To our chief foreign affairs correspondent, Andrea Mitchell, who went to the Havana neighborhood at the center of the mystery.
Tonight, the U.S. Embassy in Havana virtually shut down. U.S.-Cuba relations in an escalating crisis. Now 24 American embassy staff have reported mystery ailments. President Trump blaming the Cubans.
But I do believe Cuba is responsible.
Now in their first interview, Cuba's investigative team, top security officials and a doctor pushing back. Did you do it?
Without hesitation, I'm telling you no.
The colonel says they've had nearly 2,000 people looking into the charge that U.S. diplomats were targeted by a sonic weapon, suffering a range of symptoms: hearing loss, headaches, nausea, even mild traumatic brain injury.
Cuba doesn't possess this technology. Cuba has never produced these types of weapons.
Let me play for all of you the sound. This is what some diplomats reportedly say they'd heard. But a document the Cubans provided to NBC News says that audio was not at acoustic levels damaging to health. And American experts telling us there's no known technology that explains these symptoms.
There's never been any kind of physiological response that reflects the symptoms that have been reported that have been ever caused by sound waves of any type.
And this is the room. We went inside the hotel room where one of the incidents was reported. He said there were vibrations through this window. Another diplomat lived here and many others nearby. The Cubans say they interviewed more than 300 neighbors, conducted dozens of medical exams, took air and soil samples, studied insects, toxic chemicals, and electromagnetic waves. Nothing panned out.
Not even one person was sick.
Not even one person in the neighborhoods was affected the same way. What about speculation Cuban hardliners are to blame to derail diplomatic relations? They say no way. Or perhaps a third country, Russia. No other country could have done this.
We don't have definitive answers yet, but Cuba has never allowed, nor would we ever allow, our territory to be used in this way.
The Cuban doctor in charge frustrated that the U.S. won't let him talk to the American doctors on the case.
Medically, let us do it together. And let's find what is happening, because there are people that are sick. We want to discover why.
The American Embassy in China has issued a health alert after a consular employee apparently suffered a brain injury. The U.S. official station in Guangzhou reported strange sounds and sensations beginning last year and later showed signs of a concussion. This case appears to be similar to what happened to 24 Americans in the U.S. Embassy in Cuba.
Good morning. China is offering to assist the U.S. in investigating what happened. So far, only one case has been reported in China. But what was once a caper confined to Cuba is now a global mystery.
We're concerned about it. It's a serious medical incident.
Secretary of State Mike Pompeo said the U.S. is committed to getting to the bottom of what caused mild traumatic brain injury in an employee at the U.S. consulate in Guangzhou, China.
We've notified China of what took place as best we know it, and they have responded in a way that is exactly the right response.
Chinese Foreign Minister Wang Yi, who met with Pompeo Wednesday in Washington, appealed to the U.S. for restraint. We don't want to see that this individual case will be magnified, complicated, or even politicized, he said. The State Department stopped short of calling it a sonic attack, instead issuing a health alert that warns Americans in China if you experience any unusual acute auditory or sensory phenomena accompanied by unusual sounds or piercing noises, do not attempt to locate their source. Instead, move to a location where the sounds are not present. That's the bizarre noise heard by many of the 24 injured Americans based at the U.S. Embassy in Cuba, who suffered nausea, headaches, even permanent hearing loss and concussions. In response, the U.S. kicked out most Cuban embassy officials and nearly shuttered its embassy in Havana.
This certainly remains a mystery.
CBSN contributor Isaac Stonefish is a senior fellow at the Asia Society.
Even if the U.S. government does not accuse Beijing of any wrongdoing, it still leaves a bad taste in people's mouths that an American diplomat fell ill in such a bizarre way while working in China.
Good news on the corona front. The rate of new infections, it turns out, is down. The World Health Organization is now giving Beijing props for the way that it's handled the potential spread. And there's even talk today, get this, of a potential vaccine on the horizon. All good stuff, right?
32,000 cases of the novel coronavirus have been confirmed in 28 countries now, with the vast majority of those cases housed in mainland China. But as the number of cases grows, so does the global response. Japan, the country outside China hit hardest by the outbreak, and who, as of today, has reported over 200 coronavirus cases, decided Tuesday that it'll extend its travel restrictions to bar entry from China's Zhejiang province. And the United States has begun implementing new rules around travel to China, including limiting Americans flying into the country to 11 specific airports for screening.
CDC, in conjunction with the State Department, has updated our travel guidance and now recommends that travelers avoid unnecessary travel to China.
In an apparent effort to fight the disease, the United States Centers for Disease Control and Prevention says it screened over 30,000 passengers from China at these 11 airports, and that the tighter travel restrictions have resulted in fewer passengers flying from the U.S. to China. And countries worldwide are also screening at major international airports to prevent the spread. Meanwhile, a company named Inovio Pharmaceuticals says it's getting closer to releasing a vaccine for the virus, with one of their lead researchers currently in Sweden meeting with the World Health Organization to develop a vaccine deployment strategy.
4 guys standing next to the door, shouting at me and my friend Lucy here. We're walking together, saying, "Hey, coronavirus." And they do the gesture covering their nose and their mouth with the color of their shirt, and they're laughing out loud.
Chinese students Robin and Lucy are the latest victims of racist abuse linked to the coronavirus, shouted at in Cardiff city centre while heading to lectures.
I feel very sad, and also I don't know how to react at that time, but I think the virus is a problem that everyone has to face.
While we were filming, someone shouts at their friend Sarah. She's from Wuhan, and it's not the first time that she's had abuse for wearing a mask.
My parents are worried about me and want me to wear masks even I am in the UK. I'm really frustrated when somebody just shot at me coronavirus.
These students are part of a growing number facing hostility. There have also been reports of abuse in Sheffield, Leicestershire, York and Manchester over COVID-19, the official name now given to the virus.
The Chinese ambassador to the UK has told Sky News that he has raised the issue of hatred and discrimination with the British government. But it's not just university students. Other Chinese nationals in the UK have been forced to go to the police over concerns about racism.
This was a private message sent to our Facebook page. The disgusting barbaric animal cruelty you people do, you deserve to get the virus.
Kate Gordon helps run the Chinese Community Centre in Birmingham. Although abuse is rare, it is increasing and has even forced some Chinese workers in the city to change their daily routine.
Very, very aware now that if we stand on a tram or a train or a bus and we're coughing or sniffing, people are looking at us, so I feel very conscious. And some of us have started to change our work hours, so we're not travelling during peak hours, just to avoid this kind of very negative and quite hostile environment.